User engagement has shifted from feed to reels, and the vast majority of money from advertisers, being us, is being put into feed. A, because it's stable and it's worked, but also because brands, not many, have figured out how to entertain and then sell in that format. And so every time I do end up opening up Facebook, it's almost becoming more and more and more of like a TV guide. So I think, how are we going to recognize what the next step should be if we're sitting here spending a lot of time trying to perfect a creative in the Facebook feed when people are using this less and less and less, right? And so step one for us is to recognize that the space is drastically shifting. I wouldn't lie and say that we've figured that out yet, but I think that we've got the appropriate framework to figure it out.
Hello and welcome to the D2C podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today we are percolating with DeathWish Coffee's e-commerce director, Will Critcher. DeathWish Coffee is an amazing D2C brand that started in 2012, positioning itself as the world's strongest coffee, and has now grown into an 8-figure coffee juggernaut and massively accelerating during the pandemic when we all turned to the bean to help us keep going. Will is a performance marketing veteran, and this podcast is filled with usable advice on how team alignment on the retail side of the business has created a halo effect in the D2C world, how a Superbowl ad experience launched DeathWish and what it could do for you, why DeathWish super premium designation and their tagline as the strongest coffee in the world has been essential to their product growth, and how the addition of a quick shop has exponentially increased the size and rate of their add to carts. And you'll also find out why Will would direct our $50,000 grant that we offer fictitiously to test an ad traffic source that maybe not people have, characterized best by orange and black. Some people call it Pornhub. I hope you enjoy this podcast. On with the show. Imperfect Foods, Instacart, Nespresso, and Coach all use Coley to generate TikTok videos that are on brand, on budget, and on time. As one of TikTok's first creative partners, Coley has the track record, know-how, and tools to help you TikTok your way to short-form glory. And now you can tap into that exclusive expertise with Coley's TikTok Creative Brief template. It has all the steps you need for successful creator collaborations and best practices to create fun and engaging TikToks. Head to Coley.com/TikTok to download your free copy and start creating TikToks for your brand that people actually want to watch. That's COHLEY.com/TikTok. Will, welcome to the D2C podcast. Can we start with a little bit about the DeathWish Coffee story?
Yeah, we can absolutely start with that. So I've been with DeathWish for a little under 4 years. So what I'm telling you is piecemealed. We are still a pretty small company, but it's always like the old wise tale. Like the founder says it to the best friend who we started with, and then it always just gets modified throughout time. But basically, what took place is the founder, Mike Brown, who is I believe he had his master's in finance and became a CPA and was like, this is not my jam. Decided to open up a coffee shop here in Saratoga, New York. After a couple of years of running that shop, he would constantly have people come into the shop and say, Mike, what's your strongest cup of coffee? Can you give me your strongest cup of coffee? So he would just kind of pull from what he had. But then he started to realize like, what is the world's strongest coffee? So he went to Google, as anyone would do, and he Googled world's strongest coffee and no results. And he was like, opportunity, which is brilliant. And so then from there, he went and, went through the process of sourcing different beans and doing all the investigation and research through figuring out, how to get the most potency out of caffeine potency from a coffee bean, sourced a bunch of different stuff and was able to concoct the world's strongest coffee, DeathWish Coffee. From there, I believe is pretty shortly after he had put the packaging together. I believe Al Roker or someone from Good Morning America had come up to Saratoga, just unrelated, and tried the cup and came in for a cup of coffee. And Mike was like, "Oh, good opportunity, obviously," and it made an impact. They ended up calling him later that day and was like, "Wow, this coffee is incredible. We'd love to come up and maybe interview you. What do you think about that?" And he's like, "Yeah, cool. We can make that work. Like in a week or two." And they were like, "No, we'll be there tomorrow." So he's like, oh, shit. So they come up tomorrow. And at the time, again, SCT, Saratoga Coffee Traders, was the coffee shop. DeathWish was made in the basement of this little coffee shop. And so they came in to like see the operation. And it was just this like, inside of a basement. And from there, I think it just kind of propelled, some of the awareness that and the benefits that we saw. And then that rolled into us winning, I'm skipping quite a few steps here, but it rolled into us competing to win a Super Bowl commercial, which aired in 2017, which we did. And that was the first thing I did within the first like 3 or 4 hours of being employed at DeathWish. I was like, once I had my GA access, I was like, I want to see what that looks like. And I can tell you, it was Mount Everest. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
The number of impressions. I was seeing a lot of people have been talking about Super Bowl ads on TikTok this year about how the CPM actually works out, especially for you who won a contest to get DeathWish coffees. Well, yeah, it was free 99 from Intuit, right? That was great program on their part too, right? Because they're trying to build a list of businesses. Pretty savvy move.
Yep. Yeah. It was pretty great. I mean, I think, I couldn't tell you if it's cost effective or not because we didn't pay for it, but I think that the math would check out even by like, good 2018 Facebook CPM standards. I think the cost is probably still there. I'm sure, Coinbase saw the positive benefit of that too.
What can you say about the scale that you saw there? Like, it was millions, tens of millions of impressions kind of thing?
Well, from just sessions, I think we had over 3 million sessions in about a half-hour period of time. Somehow, I mean, kudos to Shopify, didn't break the website. Definitely, at the time, I think the team was, I think with production included, I think, it was less than 10 people. So as much as preparation went into it, we still definitely got into a back order, dilemma. Actually, I believe that resulted in us getting kicked off of FBA Amazon because we couldn't fulfill the orders. We had to, restart all that process. But I want to say, it was around 2.5 to 3 million impressions within about an hour-long period. And then it just, tapered off, as it does.
Yeah, and then you just get like infinite replays for so long, I bet too, with people wanting to see the Super Bowl, commercials after the fact.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty great. Well, again, I wasn't here. I just got to see the after effect, but it was a pretty incredible thing to see.
And when I Google it, there seems to be more than one response. Was it just the one Super Bowl commercial that you guys did? You didn't come back and do it again?
Yeah, correct. We just did the one. We've talked about it constantly to doing it again, but I think we definitely operate in a very frugal, efficient mindset. And we're like, hey, can we afford that? And like we can, and we probably should get back into it. But yeah, just the one in we won in 2016. It was the 2016 season, but I think it aired February 2017.
Well, now we'll get into the nitty gritty, and I want to get into your history as well, just because you've got a unique background here. But I just wanted to also highlight just on what you've said so far, and it's something I read a Dave Gerhardt post on LinkedIn today, and he was just talking about as a CEO how important it is. Like, you gotta watch the revenue, you got to keep the revenue where it needs to be, and then you also have to be the keeper of your business's story, and how important it is to have that story, have it be something that, as you say, that evolves over time, essentially. But it's like that story is why Al Roker wanted to talk to you. That story is why you won the Intuit, right? Is that you actually had this key differentiator in your product. Yeah.
I all I could do is praise the people that were here before me, and some of them are still here today, as well as Mike Brown, in understanding the power of brand and community and story and that small business element. As we've kind of, I wouldn't say we've outgrown those shoes, but we've just, like a child, you just kind of like mature from elementary to middle to high school. I'm not really sure what grade scale we are. I'd like to think we're like getting our master's, maybe we're in graduate school perhaps. But it's always been an emphasis on generating, making sure that we remember who we are, remember where we came from, and creating context and familiarity with our customers and just audience as a whole.
Not every brand that popped in 2016, 2017, not every D2C darling is still popping or is still profitable. So I just kudos on the whole organization for continuing to grow at such a crazy pace.
We conveniently enough too. We did things a little backwards. Based on from the Super Bowl commercial, I think. But typically when, we're a DNVB, and we've actually been, this is our 10-year anniversary. They're not today specifically, but this is our 10-year in business of selling online our DeathWish coffee. And so the commercial happened about 4 to 5 years, in that window. But when, I think due to the emphasis we put on brand and storytelling and just our differentiator and where we were at being, very, I would say like the challenger brand or disruptive in that process, we found, when we decided to scale into retail, typically, you get the smaller retailers and the local, grocery stores at that level. And then eventually one day you get to the Walmart situation. And we were the exact opposite. We had the Walmart. And so then we had to kind of figure out how do we get into, some of the, I want to say smaller, but, like the Smiths of like they just don't have the same amount of distribution points. So, we actually kind of, it worked in reverse for us. So it's been very interesting.
Which was helpful, I bet. I bet it's easier to sell to smaller places when you've got the giants.
Yeah, it's also, again, we're admittedly like what we've grown into and matured to and improved our process, but it's also it's a very different skill set when people are coming to you asking for your product versus you having to go sell your product, right? And so we've had to kind of recognize that, which we always do. I don't think we go into anything with an ego per se, but I think we were riding such a success. We're like once we kind of hit these big players and we realized that the volume of like influx of interest wasn't really there. We're like, well, what's happening? Like, we're DeathWish Coffee. We're like, oh wait, yeah, you have to develop a sales team. You have to go out there and get that, and which we've deployed and done quite well. I think when I started, we were in under 1,000 retail stores, and today I think we're over 20K.
Unbelievable. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, let's go back, because I was on your LinkedIn profile, and I was kind of looking at your history and kind of where you came from. Can you talk a little bit about your marketer's hero's journey?
Oh, yeah. So true story. When everyone is a kid and they're like, oh man, or what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a doctor or a princess. And I remember clearly, I was like, I had to be between 10 and 15. I was like, I want to be a marketer. I had no idea why. it sounded so cool. And but I did understand the concept of like, playing into the psychological role and impact on people to make decisions, make transactional decisions. And so I guess in the grand scheme of things, I got to wake up or, grow up and become, exactly what I wanted to be. But so I played professional paintball for a few years. I think like from like 16 to 19, which was a ton of fun. And like, that's what I'm going to do. And so, but pretty much like once that finished, when I became 18, I've been in the marketing space throughout my entire life, or my adult life.
Is this the closed version? Is this the one with all these sort of the obstacles, like the speed game?
Yeah, X-Ball. Yep, exactly. I don't even think it's called X-Ball anymore. I don't know. I've been out of the game for a minute.
That's awesome. But what's MIT?
Yeah. So I ended up tearing my meniscus. Had it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Actually, I did get academically dismissed, though.
That's even better. That's cooler.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's a lot harder to get kicked out of MIT than it is to get in. I think like once you get in, like they do everything you can to keep you in. But my mind was set on starting my own agency, and I was like, I could do it better, and that did not work out. So I got academically dismissed from MIT. I've grown up kind of all over the country, so I went back to South Lake Tahoe, Nevada, started a graphics marketing company, and didn't work out too well. And then I took a job working with a pretty sizable print news publication or publisher, focusing on their digital side. Then I got that hair up again and decided to do it better. And so I started my own agency, Unveil. Ran that for it's about 4 years, and then in 2019 I was able to have a modestly successful exit with that. So I managed Unveil a year after starting with DeathWish, and then actually I took the DeathWish position thinking I'm like, I could kind of do it like on the side because I'm toxic, and I'm like, I'm always like, feed me more hours, and especially like when you love what you're doing, it's not really work. It's just like, you just got to have like restraint. And so so then I've just been with DeathWish since then.
I always love hearing about, I'm partnered with an agency. I always love hearing about agency exits, moderate or not. What was the key to getting that packaged up and sold?
I think what my focus of business was. So what I somehow got really, really into real estate marketing, and obviously we don't know each other very well, but I'm not the first person you would think of that would be really good at making relationships with real estate agents and that demographic of people, just because I typically tend to be a bit more casual. But at the time, especially in Nevada, the real estate market was booming. So you had the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, which Tesla was bidding to put their Gigafactory. Northern Nevada had won that bid. So when that took place, in addition to the rising cost of the housing market and just taxes and so on and so forth in California, there was a huge migration from SF to Northern Nevada. And so I worked with an independent brokerage to develop a a live in this city campaign, more or less, where essentially we were just, I think the brokerage that I was predominantly working with, they generated more sales in the month of February than Remax Realty Affiliates, which is the largest Remax brokerage in the entirety of the West Coast, I think of like the entire Western Seaboard, did in the entire first quarter. And it was all just playing off of that. And so I was also in a long distance relationship at the time, and my girlfriend lived here in New York. And so I had an opportunity to kind of scale it out and move to the East. And so when that took place, there was an agency far more substantiated in Reno, and was just able to kind of pass along that book of business.
That's perfect. It's an evergreen thing because they're always going to want people to move there.
Yeah, somehow owned the real estate advertising market in Reno for about 3 years, like unintentionally, but it worked out really well.
I love it. It's the first real estate ads and the first paintball mentions that we've had on the podcast, so I appreciate that. The last thing I just wanted to mention about your career too is it looks like you started in as sort of indirect marketing, kind of brought in maybe more as a consultant basis, and then very quickly became the director. Can you talk a little bit about that process when you got to get DeathWish?
Oh man, yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and I can't say I've had to really formulate my thoughts around it. Yeah, so my involvement with DeathWish when I was hired was to take over all the direct advertising. So email, SMS was kind of budding at the time, but predominantly the performance marketing. So paid social, paid search, as well as oversee the entire Amazon side of the business. I would say over the course of the year, as the company grew, and as everyone, I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, like everyone's wearing multiple hats. No different here. And so as we kind of grew and developed we brought in he was our COO, Mike Pilkington, who is now our CEO. The man changed my life. He was, my thought was like, I want to be a CMO. I want to be a CMO here at DeathWish. And he was like, I really think you need to go into more of the e-commerce focus. And I was like, you can get the hell, like, not interested. And just over the course of a couple of months, he just, was able to make it very clear to me that this was the path that I should kind of lean more into. And through that process, just went into the e-com management and then the director role. I honestly, like most days, I think it's all smoke and mirrors. I'm like, you guys trust me. That's crazy. You know what I mean? But like, it's awesome.
Imposter syndrome is real in this space, definitely. I'm just curious on that. Like, we haven't talked about that kind of thing before. Why do you think he pushed you towards director of e-commerce versus CMO based on your strengths?
The best way I could answer that question, which unfortunately I don't think is going to be the answer you're looking for, is that Mike Pilkington is the top 1% of the top 1% of human leaders. And I think I've been privy to quite a few encounters with people who work in the space and who are very, very good. And I would challenge almost any organization or any true human leader. That Mike Pilkington is probably a little bit better. And so why he did it, I can't exactly tell you. He just somehow understands humans, and he doesn't have he had no e-commerce background or experience. He comes from Cisco actually. So he understands the food space, but he just understands people. And he read me better than I thought I knew me. That's for sure.
Amazing. And I would intuit it has something to do with the fact that you had so much hands-on experience in this stuff, and to be a real player in that side of the business, you're not just moving pieces around. There's a lot of operation that has to happen.
Yeah,
to get it off the ground.
Yeah, and that's where part of some of the difficulties that I faced, even again owning your own agency, it's like I did have a couple of full-time employees, but that doesn't qualify me as a leader. You know what I mean? That just means that I'm the guy responsible for everything at the end of the day. And so that transition from direct advertising to the director of e-commerce here at DeathWish requires quite a bit of a mind shift. When it comes to working in the business versus working on the business, working through the people that we bring in to support the company people to support the role and the vertical itself. And so that transition has proven to be difficult. It's not because I'm a type A person. I'm just one of those, like, rather than ask, I'll just spend the 30 minutes doing it when it's like, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's been, so it makes sense why I think like I've got a lot of the right, tools in my tool belt and a lot of familiarity with those tools. It's just more so like recognizing when it's time to wear the tool belt versus when it's time to where the tool, but I guess.
It reminds me so much of a again, I reference little TikToks I've seen all the time, but I saw a TikTok about Steve Jobs talking about one of the biggest mistakes they made in the middle of their company's growth was thinking that they had to hire a bunch of professional managers. Like they were like, we need to have a bunch of professional middle managers in here. And they kind of effed up the whole company. And he then realized that what you need is to hire doers and, people that know what they're doing and don't want to be managers. The best managers are people that don't want to be managers, but kind of do it begrudgingly out of the fact that they realize that to achieve their goals and to do what they want to do in the company, you've got to be a manager. So I thought that was interesting. It sounds like it fits you to a T a bit.
It's kind of like that ideal presidential candidate, right? It's like the person who should be the president should be the person who doesn't want to be the president.
Does not want to be the president. I think all countries should have a leader that's like, I'm only coming in for one term, and my only goal is to clean things up a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get it. We'll do a politics podcast later.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'd love to. So when you did, I'm just curious, like when you came in, maybe your first, once you were, because it only happened within your first year, you'd kind of ascended to the e-commerce director kind of position. What were your like first big key steps you did when you kind of came in to put your stamp on things?
So one thing that we've done like extremely well prior to me being here is I would say our top two commodities, number one being the coffee bean, number two being an email address. And so Mike has always understood the value and the power of that first party data. And so the team always geared around, growing our list, but also making sure that we utilize that channel as a sales channel. And so when I started, if we had a product release or we were doing some type of promo, we'll say like every other Friday, the email would have the promo or the product at the top, and then it would split to a two column section where there would be two pieces of high performing content that were typically related to whatever that product was. And then beneath that, we released a podcast every week. And I recognize that, sometimes some of that content was very high performing. Sometimes it would be, the content was proven to be viral through social. And so it's like, if the goal of this email is to sell that product, then all of this is not contributing to it, but all of this is supporting that we are doing something right. And let's create a newsletter called The Scoop. And so what we did is we essentially just stripped everything out. So the only thing you could do within a sales email was click or do the thing that we would, that we wanted you to do. And then we pulled all the content out and then formulated it into a weekly Scoop newsletter. The Scoop newsletter, I think, not to offend you, but I think we grew to like 100,000 subscribers, like relatively quickly, which we were excited about. We had, I think, like on average, like a 40% open rate. We had a ton of fun. And so we're able to see, the bifurcation between, selling with content and content that sells. And then we saw the improvement within our sales focused emails. So I think that certainly helped, I think provide or display my worth in the sense of, focusing on one thing, focusing on one thing ended up creating two things, just being, laser focused, which is an ironic statement coming from me because as much as I'm not like all over the place, I feel like I can juggle 100 things, but in reality, I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. And so I
have
think
enough caffeine running through your veins to compensate.
It doesn't help. Yeah. And so I think that certainly did help. That in addition to, I would say the Scoop, and honestly, I think I honestly think it has to do with because I haven't worked a day in a long since I have started on Veil, and I think that creates a situation for me personally where it's like it's not so much that like I'm perceptually like I'm a workaholic, right? But I don't look at it that way. Granted, I need limits. I need to create my boundaries and make sure I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket, so they say. But I think because of that, I think it displayed my tolerance, my work ethic, my interest and passion through that process too. I think it's my character. I think kind of helped situate me, to transcend the position that I was currently hired to do at DeathWish.
iOS 14.5, the infamous Apple update, left D2C brands struggling to find and market to the right audiences. That's why hundreds of D2C brands are turning to Black Crow AI. Their plug-and-play machine learning technology measures in real time every visitor's likelihood to buy to build predictive audiences for retargeting and prospecting. In short, Black Crow can significantly boost ROAS by helping you specifically target people who will actually want to buy from you. Find out why brands like Magic Spoon, Barabee, and Liquid IV are using Black Crow AI. Visit blackcrow.ai to learn more and request a 30-day free trial.
How would you explain your meteoric rise on Amazon? Was it just that everything else was firing on all cylinders? You had the demand out there, so your shoppers just happened to be on Amazon as well, or was it a very aggressive sort of ad campaign to do it?
I think a little bit of the latter. We were using a managed service when I started on the paid side for Amazon, and then quickly, I would say like about 3 or 4 months after that, brought that in house. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'm like, no, let's just do it the old school way with Excel and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely had some pretty effective advertising, but I also think our product is it's always ranked, and I believe this was before I started, has always ranked very, very high on best product to gift. So I think during the Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, obviously Prime Day, and then getting into the BFCM phase, I think that always having really great positioning around the giftability of our product, I think it just kind of helped keep us afloat and keep us going through it. But I would really say it's that, and it's just people shop on Amazon, and we're not afraid to put money behind putting ourselves out there and prospecting. We recognize that some campaigns might have an 80% ACoS, which is perfectly fine because our branded is at 3. So we're not afraid to do that. And I think one of the other benefits is that we're beholden to any shareholder situation. So it's like we're allowed to kind of take these risks and take ownership and just kind of we're not gonna be able to. I think Mike Brown said this as much as I would like to take credit for it, because I said it one time and Mike said I stole it from him. So I like to think that I'm as smart as Mike Brown. But the goal is that in X number of years, instead of people walking around saying, oh, let's go get a Starbucks, they'll say I want a DeathWish. Granted, totally different coffee consuming experience, but that's always stuck with me, and especially when Mike validated it, that I allegedly stole it from him. I think it's been something that it's kind of like a byline in how we operate. Sometimes we'll even we'll talk to people who are in the space or just e-commerce or just marketing as a whole, and they're like, oh man, your social is so edgy and it's so cool and whatever, and we'll sit here and have conversations and we'll say man, that post we just made was as sharp as a butter knife. We're like what are we doing here? We're losing our touch. But kind of hearing it from outside points of view, I think kind of lets us know that we're still we're trying to keep continue to be edgy and sharp and bold.
Love it. And I skipped right over this, but when you mentioned the podcast newsletter, first of all, for you to come in and make those part of your initial role, those aren't always the things that have the biggest initial impact. So good on you for investing in these longer term plays potentially. How did that work? How do you quantify the impact of your newsletter and podcast, for instance, with your customers?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I'd like to think that I wish I could say that we could look at we utilize Klaviyo as our ESP, and I wish I could say oh look, hey, we sent an email that only points to content. We even actually drove traffic away from our website in certain cases, but when we sent this out, there's revenue attributed to that, and a lot more than what we thought that then it would in theory deserve. Granted, Klaviyo is not just saying that hey, this blog sold a product. We also have a pretty significant subscription side of the business. So that helped kind of substantiate it. But one thing that we were able to also, I think, find that validation through our own customers is that we have a pretty sizable community page on Facebook where we don't manage it. It's a customer started. I think there's 10 or 12,000 people in this Facebook community page, and we would see just prior to the publication on Monday, or even Monday or Tuesday, you would just see tons and tons of conversation kind of permeating through there, which again made us feel like, okay, we're kind of on that right track. And then in addition to that, I actually had a pretty cool experience when I did a keynote for Klaviyo Boston in 2019 talking about the scoop, and I had a DeathWish sticker on my laptop. I was at the bar after the first day, and this guy came up, and he was like, "Oh, hey, are you here for the conference?" We kind of BS him for a minute, and he was he like looked at the sticker, and he was like, "I've seen that before." He's like, "I don't drink coffee, but I've seen that before." And I was like, "Yeah, I work for DeathWish." He's like, "Yeah, why do I know that?" He's like, "I don't drink coffee." And he's like, "Wait, didn't you guys like send an email where you like said like, hey, Richard Simmons is Gene Simmons after he drinks DeathWish coffee, and you made like this weird GIF, which we did, and we put into an email." I was like, "Yeah, we did do that." And I was like, "That's incredible. This person who doesn't even drink coffee was like able to kind of associate it." Granted, what does that do to satisfy a C-suite? I think as long as we're our activities are producing helping us produce the revenue outcomes that we're looking for, and we're seeing we're able to observe like positive sentiment, list growth, and engagement. I think that at the time it satisfied our efforts, or it satisfied people questioning any reason why we made those decisions.
I love it. Now, and this is just take this from a newsletter, man, but it's a smart play, I gotta say, building the newsletter. I just got off a call this week with a high-level CPG guy who's looking at his next product, and instead of building a product, is thinking about building the content first in a lot of ways. You guys, you built the product and then built the content to support the community and things, but there's that other play, and that's kind of what we're doing in a way, where you sort of create the audience, query the audience, and then create products for them. And I imagine you can do that with future products you release.
Yeah, I think it's an example of what is it called, linear commerce, right? Where
linear commerce.
You've got you have your publishers have to productize their content, and the manufacturers have to somehow generate content to help supplement the product that they produce, and and building an audience prior to releasing the product. I think again, like we were already I think well into the game at this point, but we had a really great time, but we also saw some of the lasting benefit that came from it actually from producing that work. And I think the newsletter, there was I believe I read this. I can't remember the guy's name who, the founder of Morning Brew, but I read this article or essay that was put together as to like his process as to like what went into creating the Morning Brew. And I believe he broke it down into like 3 steps. He's like, step 1 is we're going to do this. Step 2 is we're going to do this because of step 1. Step 3 is here's the outcome. And I was like, it seemed like a very simple, granted a ton of thought had to go into what comes after that colon for each step, but it helped create that business case for generating that newsletter. And so we'd already launched a scoop when I read this. And so we took that and, kind of went through that exercise ourselves to validate that. And I get it too from like being, if you're a lean team or if you're, trying to launch a product, you look at the paid advertising side, which is a total shit show now. It's nothing like what it used to be, obviously. It's hard to generate, to get buy-in from founders, especially if they created a product and they're looking for sales, and say, hey, it'd be really cool if we invested a ton of time and effort into generating content or a newsletter that's not, selling your product. It's, it's helping answer questions, or it's providing a solution, it's a selling solutions type thing. It's a little harder to get the buy-in, but I think I don't think there's really any examples. I'm sure that there are, but that I'm familiar with, examples of where a company, especially someone B2C, goes that route and it did not pay dividends, right? But you see tons of examples of people who don't do that, and then when Facebook changes its algorithm, they lack the comprehension and knowledge to adjust and pivot, and so they're not insulated. But what content marketing does, it insulates you from. In theory,
it turns you into a distribution channel. It turns your turns your e-commerce business into its own distribution channel in a lot of ways. If you can create that channel to your audience's affinity through content, then you can kind of keep that channel open regardless of ads, which is the beauty of content marketing. Big shout out to Alex Lieberman, founder of Morning Brew. If you're listening, if anyone knows Alex Lieberman, I'd love to have him on the podcast just to give him a big thanks. They put out so much content, so much high value content about the process of building a newsletter as they were building it, that I have to think they've launched 1,000 newsletters or more have kind of launched from all that content they put out there.
That's a great call. I wonder how many, I wonder how many newsletters that by them publishing out that process, that they're responsible for, helping start up.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk. I love, this is my new thing now. With every time before we have a podcast, I like to go on SEMRush. We're trying to get a sponsorship deal, so SEMRush, talk to me. And look at some of your organic keywords that you're ranking for. And there's one that really stood out to me, and I bet you know what it is. You're doing extremely well. Number 1 with a bullet on the search term, "Why does coffee make you poop?"
Why would that be the case? Yeah, no,
No,
yeah, no, yeah, no,
no, I'm
no,
looking
yeah.
at it. You get
Yeah, totally makes
22,000
sense.
impressions on your "Why Does Coffee Make You Poop" article. Where did that piece come from?
Well, I think probably someone was taking a poop while and they're like, "Man, I'm in here a lot." It was probably Megan or somebody who's on our content
Yeah.
marketing team, and they were just like, "Man, we should write some content about this." Actually, I'm gonna piggyback off your SEMRush plug, and we're actually looking at. We've been talking to Dude Wipes, and we're like, "There's an opportunity here. Like, there's clearly poop, like Dude Wipes and coffee. Like, come on, there's an opportunity here."
That's so good.
Yeah, I think outside of like for us in our space, it's like there's some obvious like layups and low hanging fruit, and I think that just happens to be one of them.
What else? Like, how do you approach? Because your content marketing is dialed. How do you approach your? Because I guess you guys are just cruising along here at over 100,000 visitors a month kind of thing. What's your sort of strategy for SEO going forward?
Oh, that's a really good question. Is considering the timing too. I think right now how we look at SEO, right, is that from the coffee space, right, I'm going to oversimplify it. Let's say that there's only so many things that you can generate specific to the term and the phrasing of coffee and the type of that consumer intent, like that intent-based searching. And I think that we've identified a handful of them, like why does coffee make you poop? Coffee stains, right? For instance, actually that was one that we did. I don't think the search volume is as high as you would think it would be. But the one thing we looked at was like, okay, if the psychology of somebody who is typing like how to remove a coffee stain from insert, something in their house or car seat. So what that validates is that either they or someone they are like closely related to consumes coffee. And then we could also probably assume that they're probably not super stoked that they're having to Google how to remove this. And so I was like, okay, let's see if we can rank number one for how to remove coffee stain from insert said thing. And then we write, information on best practices and how to do that. And we believe that, people will certainly click through to that because although we're not Clorox, right? We are an expert in coffee. And so therefore, the perceptual, like we are an expert on speaking on the process. So if we can then provide that information to likely the right audience who, depending upon, if it's them or, maybe a significant other, so on and so forth, that's searching it. But then if we can also, I'm not sure if it's been fully updated. I might be speaking too early, but like, how can we maybe change their psychology? So while we were looking at ways to remove coffee stains, I think someone said, I think we found something that was like, pour battery or pour beer on it. And so I immediately was like, okay, so there's a coffee stain, you like pour stout on it, like that wouldn't work. And I was like, wait, that would be really funny. What if we like supply like the best practices and information we can on like how to remove coffee stains plus anything that we know through our master roaster. And then like in the end of it, like encapsulate in a video, like how to remove coffee stains and like put coffee in like a white couch, like pour beer on it. Obviously, like it's not going to remove it, but it's just like changing the psychology or the mindset of the person who's looking for that answer. I think one of them is like, how to remove coffee stain, like, oh, you light it on fire. So like we burnt the whole, I think it was like a t-shirt down or like, burn a t-shirt up. But the whole point of that is to, rank in something that is relevant to, whoever is searching it up. But then in that case, we're like, how can we shift the mindset where it's like, they're not interested maybe at the time in buying coffee. They're just interested in getting rid of this. But if we can like make them kind of laugh at like, yeah, it'd be great if I could just burn my car seat or I could burn my curtain or something like that. And then perhaps that might intrigue them to sign up for email and purchase our coffee.
The one that's most interesting to me, besides the Does Coffee Make You Poop, is your whole page that you have on Norse mythology. A reference, is that because your Superbowl commercial featured Norse mythology? How does Norse mythology get tied into DeathWish?
We partner, I'm not sure when, certainly before I started, with the famous guitarist from Black Sabbath, Zakk Wylde. And I think at the time there was a few rock stars and musicians who were like coming out with their own craft beer and coffee. And so Zakk certainly wanted to do it, found a great fit with us. So we moved forward and we have Valhalla Java, which is I believe it's a medium roast blend. It's actually super, super tasty. It doesn't have the same caffeine potency as our as DeathWish coffee. And so from that, I think when we had so our logo is actually like the original intention of it is actually meant to be like a poison warning, right? Like that was the whole like skull and crossbones. But when the Intuit Super Bowl commercial got made, they took that and then their understanding or awareness of Zach Wilde and how he's kind of this long bearded, almost kind of like Viking looking type person. And so they made it into this whole, Viking ship component, which was fine. And the commercial is great. But I think it kind of set this messaging that we're like, that we are this like kind of like type of Viking coffee and this whole like, this whole Nordstrom type thing. And so we just kind of rode that wave, right? Like that's not like we could have like, fought against it, but I think like who are we to tell the market how they should feel, and so I think we just kind of we leveraged it, but I think that's really kind of where that content came from.
And it's funny, you're still getting traffic on it. No matter, you did this even maybe before your time. You just moved up to the top 10 on that page, up 15 spots on Norse Mythology. Maybe it's with the Northmen coming out. I don't know if there's which is a great movie, by the way. I saw that last week.
Yeah, it could be. I think, there's been like a high influx of like Viking shows and things like that too. So I think it's just been kind of been a bit of a trending topic for a while too. So
Very
it makes
cool.
sense.
What else? So we haven't talked about paid social. Where are you guys at with, a lot of the growth that we've talked about has been on, Amazon and, other places with SEO. What has your paid social presence been like with DeathWish?
Oh man. I wonder if my initial reaction I just gave you is similar to other people who are in the similar space, and I think we handled iOS 14.5 decent. I think we were, for what we could do to, make pivots. Where we are today, though, I think utilizing social as a, paid social as a growth channel, both from like an actual acquisition and also kind of an awareness, feeder, like a farm system. I think we found, different obstacles that we're not necessarily familiar with. And I think those obstacles are best described from my perspective in Facebook's Q4 earnings report and specifically the CFO's summary statement. And I'm going to butcher this, but he basically said, he or she, I'm not sure, basically said that the Q1 is looking to underperform, what they had projected prior to. And the reason for that is user engagement has shifted from feed to Reels, which is not news to anybody, right? And so obviously he said feed to Reels. He didn't say Facebook to TikTok, which is also definitely the case, or Instagram to TikTok. And the vast majority of money from advertisers, being us, is obviously put into feed, right? Because because it's staple and it's worked, but also I think because brands, not many, have figured out how to entertain and then sell in that video in that format. And so I think some of where we stand currently with it is that and again, this is my opinion. I'm not sure. I have no data to back this up, but I think like every time I do end up opening up Facebook, it's almost becoming more and more and more of like a TV guide, like an advertising platform. It's like less and less organic posting in there. And I think that's Facebook trying to kind of compensate for what they were expected to underperform on their Q1. And so where we're at is that when we started to recognize some of the challenges, higher acquisition costs, plainly put, just a higher acquisition cost. It just wasn't doing what it was doing this time last year, not even close to a degree. And so I think there's a book. It's called Wanting by Luke Burgess. That's on the power of mimetic theory. But long story short, he said something not related to Facebook advertising at all. But he said stop burning witches, and it had to do with climate change. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so
we'll get into it later.
That stood out to me so much, and I was like, we're never going to be able to figure out how what pivots or how to solve this paid social dilemma that we're facing, right? Like not through an agency, not through a resource, until we stop burning witches. The context there is that science isn't what said, hey, we need to stop burning witches because witches are not responsible for weather change, right? Like we stopped burning witches and then science became more prevalent. And therefore, then they were like, oh, okay, obviously that helps validate that. And so I think, how are we going to, recognize what the next step should be if we're sitting here spending a lot of time trying to perfect a creative in the Facebook feed when the CFO of a publicly traded company said, like, people are using this less and less and less, right? And so I think the step one for us is to stop burning witches and to recognize that the space is drastically shifting. And I wouldn't lie and say that we've figured that out yet, but I think that we've got the appropriate framework to try and figure it out.
So that means you're sort of skipping the feed and focusing your paid social efforts on things like Reels and TikTok. Is that what I get?
I think if it produced the returns that would be conducive to our targets, I would say yes, we would be doing that, but I don't think we're there yet. We still are, certainly in the feed, and again, I think like every day that we are, it is. I'm not going to say like that the feed is not worthwhile, because it certainly is, right? Like it certainly does still produce results, but I think it's like it's the proverbial kicking the can down the road. It's like the longer we sit in this space and the longer that we kind of fight against, this unknown area, which is, I think, probably part of the obstacle. I wouldn't say so much for us, but I think it is a very understandable obstacle. It's like, I don't know what's on the other side of that. I don't know how to solve that problem. So I'm just going to keep taking my diminishing returns and apply all this effort in here. And so, we're still active in feed, and we still do see some very good weeks, some challenging weeks here and there. But I think ultimately, like, the shift is, it's the wave is certainly coming, and I feel like that I'm not the most credentialed person to speak on it, but yeah.
Interesting. Now, okay, so this is something we don't talk about on the webs about a lot. I come from, I'm partnered with a performance marketing agency, and so this on the Shopify side of things, on the actual store creation side, we don't do as much. And you mentioned something about adding a quick shop to your collection page. Can you talk about the impact that had on the biz?
Oh yeah, I couldn't give you so we Thomas, the senior art director, and myself took on redesigning and building the website on our own last year, which we launched we started like late 2020, and I think we launched in June 2021. One of the main things, which again, it's not this unique novel concept of adding a quick shop feature within a collection page, but we did recognize through data that we already had that a lot of the conversion value was originating, or the collection page had a lot to do with it. Obviously, if people are like traveling through that process. So we thought, what could we do to, just make it easier for people to add products to their cart? So we just added, the quick shop feature on desktop, which just allows people to quickly add products to cart, which was also beneficial because our pixel prioritization was add to cart through Facebook as well. So everything kind of like was situated for that. But by adding the quick shop feature on our collection page, our add to cart rate grew, almost instantly. But I would say now that we've been live for like 6-7 months, we grew like 300 to 400% in add to cart rate, which certainly is impacted the conversion rate a little bit, right? Which is a different situation, but it's like at least we're getting there. But we also, again, rely on our automation and email to help close those those purchases.
Very cool. Okay, so you mentioned earlier. So what was the name of the leader that you worked with? Who you say is in the 0.1% of global business leaders? Mike Pilkington.
Mike Pilkington.
Do you have any other? It sounds like you've worked with a lot of great leaders, from the original CEO to your current CEO. Do you have any other like pearls of wisdom around leadership that you've kind of really taken to heart as you've built out your marketing team at DeathWish?
Oh man. Oh, too much, too many things, and I almost again feel like uncredentialed to impart the wisdom. I think one thing is the speed at which truth is shared in an organization is, I would say, is directly correlated to the success of that business. And what I mean by that is, if we found out that our coffee bean had no caffeine in it, for instance, right, and that was like we're like, oh shit, right, and then me and like our VP of sales had that conversation. Let's say the VP of sales wife, let's say she was friends with somebody who worked with a competing company, and somehow that slipped through. How fast would that information get through? Instant, right? They would instantly find that. And so, but because we would be like, oh, what are we going to do? We got to kind of frame it the right way. We don't want to get, but I'm making this situation up. So it's like, I guess it doesn't fully make sense. But if we're not honest and directly transparent about, situations, no matter what they are, then we're just, we're replicating Blockbuster, and so I think the speed of truth is highly important. Context over control. We provide a tremendous amount of context to every person that works at DeathWish. We're a big believer in having everybody own their own outcomes, and that can't be done with micromanagement and just overcorrection. It's a lot of fail fast, try it, and if honestly, I think if people are risk adverse, especially depending upon the role here, if they're risk adverse, then we try to suss that out prior to even offering them a job. I would say, context over control is a big one. I can't say I've heard the word procedure ever used here, and if it is, usually somebody throws something at the person who said it. We're a big, we try to roll out processes, and obviously which we do need, because again, we're still in graduate school. We're not employed yet. We're not in elementary school, but we still got some growing up to do. But yeah, context over control. I think. Being honest, being very, very bluntly honest about our own shortcomings. Accountability is not, being accountable to oh yeah, that didn't go well. Being accountable is getting caught doing the right thing. And so I think, and that's not hard to see with anybody that works here. I talk shit to people. Especially if they're on my team, and if I'm walking out at 6, and Kelly, who's head of our own marketing, if she's here at 6, I'm like, stop being such a try hard. I'm like, go home before me, kind of thing, right? I don't want to look weird, but it's everyone's just eager to be here. So I think everyone, context over control.
I like that, because then you get them pulling together on their own, right? Rather than it's funny. I think of this agency that I started in this agency at Pilot House. We were 20 employees at the time. We're now 140. And I don't think it would have happened maybe if we were all in an office in a way. This insane hypergrowth that we've experienced, it's because I think that the company's done such a good job of aligning people, incentivizing the right way, keeping things transparent, and just everyone just kind of pulls together with this invisible thread of I also on my team I had it described as you just got to be able to run along a bunch of other psychos, which is the one way to put it.
Yeah. I think thick skin here is it's important. I think one thing we started out too, which I subscribe to, it was oh, we're a family. It's the family, and then I think it was Mike that brought this up, and he was like we're not a family, we can't be a family. He's we're a Super Bowl winning football team, where it's I love you like a family member, but I expect the absolute best out of you because you're my teammate. And so it almost, if anything, I think it kind of uplifted our expectation relationship, and we're I would say we're very good, but we're pretty good, and I think we're going to be even better moving forward with, giving actionable feedback, not veiling feedback, or veiling personal tension as feedback. Oh, you could have done that. We're very open and honest with one another in that process, and at the same time, super supportive, but expect the absolute best out of everyone at all times, and it's. I think I applaud the upper leadership, the C-suite, on how they orchestrate that and communicate that out, because I can't imagine how complex that could be, especially with 2020 till now. You've got 2020 and the Great Resignation. We have almost no turnover here. I think it's just it's when we moved into this building, the day we got in here, actually the day Mike Pilkington started at our old office, the day he started, there was a huge storm, and it rained so heavily that we had to put a huge trash can in front of his office because it was just dumping water, and he was like, we got to get out of here. So we spent this time, we moved into this beautiful place in downtown Saratoga. The day we got here, I think it was 1 p.m. Lindsay, who's our chief people officer, she was like, hey, everybody, go home. Nobody can work from here anymore because of COVID. And so once everything kind of opened back up and people could slowly start to come in, you start to see people just kind of dwindle in. And we have a really cool work structure here where it's called Flex to Death, where you can either work from the office, you can work from home, or you can work remote. Doesn't matter if you live next door, doesn't matter anything. It's called CCT, which is core collaborated time, is between 8:45 and 3:30, which is the only time you have to be available. Anything outside of those hours, you don't have to be available whatsoever. We're pretty much allowed to set our own schedule in any capacity, and I think just giving the control to the people in the context, and I think it was a little weird for some people who started to with. Actually, I'm going to pin that for a second and go back to it because somebody else said something I thought was brilliant. We had a conversation, a leadership meeting about 3 or 4 months ago. And someone had said, "Hey, can we just make the rule that DeathWish cannot be someone's first job, because we're going to ruin them whenever they leave, because they're going to come to the space where they're like, this is what it's like working for a company." And we're like, hell yeah, it is, at least this company. But if you go somewhere else, it might be very, very different. And so, which I thought was hilarious. And I think it really did kind of encapsulate what the environment and experience is here. But yeah, I mean, we just everybody knows everybody's down for the cause, and everybody cares a lot about the organization and each other and what we're doing and our customers and our involvement with it. Like, I can't tell you how many times we've released something and seen just one person has had, this like really strong negative opinion about how we did something or said something. And we take that into serious consideration. We actually we talked about like always keeping the customer in the room. And like, I literally created like a customer, I was like, hey, like whenever we make a decision, I'm like, are we thinking with the customer in the room? And like, it's like, we'll bring the person, like the customer in there. It's like, so, I would say we care a lot about it. And it's not just conjecture or like, outward statements. I don't think we don't virtue signal really in any way. I think if anything, we're a little too bullish for that one, but yeah.
That sounds great. We gotta wrap up here because there's an answer to a question that we haven't heard before, and I've got to ask you: if we were to give you a $50,000 grant to use for your marketing, how would you use it in the next month?
Oh my God! Pre-roll and display ads on Pornhub. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me right now? Hold on. Okay, we've all been there, right? We've all been there. Okay, if there was a pre-roll video and it said hot coffee near you. Like, tell me that wouldn't sound. There was a Tim Ferriss podcast that I listened to. I think he did an interview with Seth Godin a year ago. I was listening to the podcast. Tim Ferriss is like a relatively pretty straightforward person, right? He's got a personality, but he's not like a big jokester, at least from, as being an audience member of his. And I was listening to this podcast and I was super excited to hear the conversation. And he starts right into the ads and he's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. This ad's brought to you by Pornhub. And I was like, wait, like, what? Like, I was like, Pornhub's advertising on Tim Ferriss? And he's like, no, I'm just kidding. And then like, he went into like, I think it was like Four Sigmatic or something. And I was like, whoever wrote that ad copy was brilliant, because it was just like, you're just thinking you're listening through ads. And like, so I think Pornhub's got a huge opportunity. I think, especially if people look at like, oh, do you want to associate yourself to something? And my perspective is like, we glorify violence, but something about the sexual side of life is where it becomes a little too taboo and risky. And I think, if I could.
Your brand is built for it. Your brand is built for it in a way, right? Because you're traversing mortality. You might as well get to sexuality in some way. And I got it. I haven't told anyone this. I have advertised on Pornhub before. I worked for like a CBD linear commerce outfit kind of before this. And the ad that I created with a CBD, but it was about CBD and, what's it called? Whatever Viagra's for, about, can this be something CBD, that helps with ED?
Erectile dysfunction. Yeah.
Erectile dysfunction. And, it didn't do well. It didn't do well, but it was a great ad with a CBD bud that was limp and then not. Anyways, I can't get into it too much. I actually have to take my daughter to ballet and she's looking at me right now, so we'll change the topic. If you want to know more about DeathWish Coffee, you should go to deathwishcoffee.com. If people want to, I think, Will, you're a marketing leader in this space. If people want to get in touch with you, as people often do when they're in our content, how do you suggest they do that?
Man, I'm the coolest person in the world. Best way you can find me is LinkedIn. Like, I'm the worst person on social. Best way to find me is LinkedIn or email me. I'm always down to talk it up.
We're definitely going to have to do another one because I think there's a lot more that we could talk about here. I'd also love to have you back for like a boardroom post where you actually write for the newsletter a little bit, write a piece on something near and dear to your heart. Love to invite you to do that as well.
Yeah, love to.
That's awesome. This is great. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.